So hi there and welcome back. So this is a short video about an incoming project that I'm going to prepare here. It is mostly creation about this car. This is of course in a bigger scale. I took the model from Werk, I think it's the company, it's Werk 83. Check there. It's this model, DRM Norris Ring 1981 Bob Wollek. And it is basically the last evolution of the Kramer competition cars used in the 80s, was the evolution, the final evolution of the K1, K2, K3, and the final K4. So I know that this model in 124 doesn't exist. There was just a quite long time ago a die cast from Ditech slot from Germany, not so good in quality, and absolutely rare to find today. And even if you find it is not this great quality. I had that model in the past, but after I made my attempt in building up the 996 Turbinken from the Ditech slot, was another evolution of the Biturbo 996 racing in the early 2000 years in the Nürburgring. I decided to sell that model at the time, and I have no regrets because the quality was absolutely not at the level. So basically the point is to try to create this shape, of course starting from, like in the real car, from an evolution of the K3. And here we have the sample that I'm using now to study completely, and I want to keep it with me every time to check the proportion, because this 118 model is absolutely decent, for the price they asked. This is a model that I took from I think CK model cars in Germany, and it was scheduled to be around 80 euros plus postage, including the postage is a model that you pay that amount. So here we can see instead what I did some times ago. This was the building up of the scale Coachworks racing kit. Basically was the first K3 available, the only K3 available, and it's basically this model. I have another one because at the time I took two of them. I think they are not original scale Coachworks models. They can be clones that I bought in UK still about 10 years ago, when the model was unique, because recently we had on the market the best model in my opinion to work with. That is the Nuno Platz model. Is this box here. Here I have a lot of mess, but you can see is this card there, reversed, but it's this box. And it is a model that Nuno Platz made a couple of years ago now. Probably the best around, in the easiest way to do a K3. K3 was a Kramer evolution, Kramer evolution of the 935, was a private preparator making this type of models, But let's see if we point them in the same direction, because, the point is, of course, to try to achieve a shape that is resembling basically this one. This was a car that in reality was racing before this one, because this was an attempt to make a super turbo charged 935 or 1981, racing mostly in the German DRM, Deutsche, Rennen, Master, whatever. Probably was the first evolution of what it became the DTM, Touringwagen. This was instead the bigger ones, from the early 80s. And also she raced with the American colors, with slightly more difference for aerodynamics and so on, in the Fitzpatrick livery in America. So it's also interesting for that type of racing, And as you can see, there is some differences between, of course, the main body of the K3, which it was the evolution, and the final K4, And let's study a little, because the K4 looks like a kind of reinterpretation that they did of this other model that was the official Porsche 935/78, racing at Le Mans. It was the real official whale, nicknamed the whale Porsche, because she became bigger, wider, longer in the tail, to try to achieve the silhouette, But of course, as you probably know, the rear angles of the cockpit were completely changed by Porsche. So basically they try to do the same trying to get a similar power, you know, because this was a car that featured nearly 800 horsepower at the time, and instead this other one has nearly 750, something like that, plus the turbo, the regulation of the turbo that was brutal, you know, and could arrive in qualification to nearly 1000 horsepower. But of course the main issue of the real car was the reliability and the resistance during races, you know, so she was very, very easy to, boom, explode. To make the model, so I was thinking basically to work on something, because of course I took also this one to study and to take measures, you know. This is the model provided by Gunze Sangyo. There is also one box made Tamiya that is a little more accurate in details and a little more accurate in shape. Don't expect good model, because also the Tamiya one is have been proposed in two different boxes, but the body shape is always the same, and it is anyway a body shape made for the battery cars. You know, in the 70s and in the 80s we had kind of these models featuring battery pack, you know, the two stereo battery AA, I think they were, the quite bigger one, you know, round bigger one, AA type, and they had a switch under, so they were basically meant to be made, painted, then you turn on the switch, you point it to a wall, and then you crash the model. So that was the meaning of that stupid stuff they made back in time. You know, you have to figure it out, stuff coming from the 80s, so the toys was not like today that is. Also in that world another competition. And many modelers, you know, I seen since many years try to do this car starting from that one, you know, because basically the front end is quite similar, you know. You have this type of vents here that are similar to the vents you have there. So basically looking at this type of detail, you think that is probably easier to get this. But if you look at all, that's why I took the model in 18. If you took all the shape of the model, it's even better if you look compared to the... Let's try to place them in the same direction. Hold on, because this is a brick of metal, so with one hand is always a little bit tricky. Hold on. Point it in this direction so we can see all of them. So basically my point is, if you look at that shape and if you look at this shape, this is, you see that that one down there is a aerodynamic evolution of this car. Instead, with this one, there is, in my opinion, too many differences, you know, because of course you can get part of the cockpit area up here, but all the rest of the body is too much different, you know, starting from the covering of the engine, you know. In the K3 we had a line here that was opening all this rear part to access the engine, you know, so the part was basically very, very easy to access here. Instead, in the whale they had a different, you know, because the whale was completely tube frame under and completely modified with a different opening, while the K4 had completely all this area they used to move away, you know. There is amazing pictures of this car completely opened and featuring a metal bar, you know, with K4 written on the tube frame chassis under, where there is the engine between the turbochargers, you know. And so I think that no, this 935 78 is just have to be made like a whale, like it is, you know. The model is I don't know if I will do a kit review, probably yes, to create content on my channel. If you like it, you know, maybe write me in the comments if you want to know my die-cast review about this Gunze Sangyo 935 78. I found this car, this is the famous way, you know, with the martini colors, and this was a used box that I had, that I found in a little shop marketplace, you know, and it was missing the decal sheet. It's not this big issue because the decal sheets on the rear car should be made with fluorescent red, as well as the coverage for the brakes inside the wheels. Instead, this model don't have at all this type of decal inside. They placed a copy of I will show you later, maybe in another video, but they show basically a copy of the Tamiya 935 model, you know, the first one with the slant nose. So the decals don't match at all with that box, but it is not a problem, not an issue, because we can live without them and substitute with something nicer, like for example the indicals made by my friend Michael in America. They are absolutely much better decal than what you can find in a Gunze Sangyo 30 years ago. So there is no way to keep on studying the 935-78. We keep it there in the background. Let's just concentrate on the shape of this. So my idea will be basically to improve this model. So starting on this one, why? About the K3, as we said, it just exists basically these two type of models, you know, plus another racing one made by Renaissance, if I'm not wrong, you know, but it's not exactly this version. This version was even better, you know, because they had this detail that was already folded this way. Instead, they copied here in this model the first version of the 935 K3 that had a different air intake, you know. Let's see if I can grab the box. No, I say bullshit. It's absolutely the same. So it was another bug because they made two versions of this car. So this is quite okay, you know, to work with. And despite the pink livery, I really don't like. And so yes, I think it's absolutely easier to work on the front area and completely rework this side. Of course, have to be enlarged and becoming longer, you know. That's why it's important to have a proportion that is quite well done about die-cast model, you know. They are perfect for the shapes, you know. They also feature a lot of details for the type of model, you know. Remember that we are always dealing with something that is related to die-cast collector, so the quality is anyway good, but never fantastic as something that you can get if you make it by your own hands, if you have the skill, of course. And basically, yes, you have to, as you can see, you have to keep it lower all the rear part and completely redesign the panel and recreate mostly the rear cowl on the engine, but it's quite okay because you don't have so many grease, so many extra detail. There is, these parts in the model are probably for casting purpose completely closed, like this one and this one, while if you check the picture, these were completely hollowed and open, and the same they had to do, you know, is a little bit hidden and painted in black. So it's okay because if you look from far away, you say it's okay, imperfect. But this part, for example, this was a vent, this was completely open in the real car and they made it closed because this is of course a kind of deal that they had to make the model in proper die cast. You know, the rear car was made in carbon, not in carbon fiber, sorry, it was completely in fiberglass, so these details were completely different, you know. It was all kind of coverage that you can take it away. There is amazing picture of the stripped down car. I mostly seen the American version of this one completely disassembled, you know, as well as the side here under the door, you know. In the ordinary K3 is this level and there is so thin and it had to become like that. So it is a huge work of modification, but anyway, I think that the basic proportion, you know, the height of the car, the height proportion between the door and the underside panels can be used starting from this K3 in plastic, you know. And as usual, of course, I prefer to work on this type of model than increasing the dimension, increasing the thickness of plastic in some parts and some points to try to cast it, because of course if I make a body like that, that will be one of my future project and casting ideas, you know, to make it, instead of working with a resin, you know, that is absolutely not flexible at all. This is not the stuff that they do with the 3D. This is the stuff that they do with ordinary casted resin, you know, the resin that became like a crystal, incredibly hard, very not difficult to work with, but the classic way to work with resin, you know. So of course it's much more tricky to try to open and convert this ultra rare resin kit that nowadays have no longer the way to exist, you know, and it's just have to be kept like it is. And I probably will go for, because this model then will be heavily modified, so I could not finish like a K3, but the ordinary K3 can be finished in one of the nicest ever. That was this one, the Apple car, you know, the original Apple car from 1980, for which I took the decal. And I also suggest you to grab the decal if you want to build up that model, because I don't think that they get the license to do the Apple computer one for this. But it was Dan Jensen in the US that used to sold an excellent decal sheet made by Cartograph. At the time, I think Dan Jensen was one of the guys involved in the Scale Coachworks building production, you know. So if you want to go for an Apple car, Apple computer car. I think even driven by Bob Volek, was even the same guy. You know, this Belgian, I think he was Belgian pilot. If you know the history, you know how he badly handled Bob Volek. So the Life is Strange was another guy like Schumacher driving this type of. Those were prototypes. So if you go crashing with this, it is basically the end of your story. Instead, Bob Volek had an horrific hand because he used to train a lot when he was, I think, around 60 years old and going to retire. And for the 24 hours of Le Mans, which was supposed to be driven, I think it was the 90s, you know, when this happened. And he used to train a lot with the cycle, you know, bicycling. And he had been taken by an old guy with a van that took him, and he died for the injuries of that bike crash. You know, so it's a stupid way to be killed. I mean, you don't die with this stuff. This was stuff very easy to reach 350 kilometers per hour, you know, in the straight. So you don't die with these traps, and you die in a stupid way. So stupid way with a bicycle trying to, you know, shit happens in life. So we all know it, and this is stuff that you cannot do so much about it, you know. And another very different point, just to complete the idea review. This is mostly an idea because, as you can see, there is a huge work. I mean, to convert this stuff, a K3 into a K4, and it's probably for me the main step to do it, you know. It's a huge work. It's a huge work, you know. And probably one of the hardest part ever, it is about the rear end of the car. As you can see here, this model has a full engine, so there is the detail here to make it completely open, and so you cannot see properly the shape of the rear end here. But what you can see, it is that in the ordinary K4, all the rear area was completely different. As you can see, you have the possibility to see the turbo fan coming from outside. In the lower part of the car, you see also this die cast is not perfect. I try to keep it because, honestly, believe me, in the image that I'm showing you with my telephone, looks like this rear wing is slightly folded, you know. Instead, the reality is absolutely not. I mean, if I look, I don't know if it is for the position of the camera of the telephone, I don't know, but it's not folded at all. So it looks folded, you know. It's not that I do this, looks folded. It is not. And so this was famous because she had this type of big vents under, plus this rig made in metal. It was should be a photo etch set, but I don't know if I will add photo etching in my models, you know. I have the possibility to do it. I made it for some trucks, but on a car I don't know, because the price will increase a lot, you know, for this type of model. But anyway, I probably will go for the creation of this master body in 2025. So probably this is one of my upcoming projects, because I see that this is a very important masterpiece of the evolution of the Kramer car, you know. And I will probably go for it, and you will see if I will be able to do this model in the proper way. Of course, my model will be opened here, and using this one like I think like the best way to copy something in scale. So if you can, and if you go for project like this, my idea is always that if you get the model of the subject that you want to go for, try to buy something that already exists in a bigger scale. So it's much better to have a guide, you know, because I usually, when I do my models, I use the guide from the picture. And today is quite complicated because very often you cross the picture of the refurbished cars, you know. I seen it when I made the RSR R7, you know, that there was a very famous and beautiful replica going around, made in the same identical way, with the same color, with the same mark. It was fantastic, but she was not resembling completely in the details the car that was original in 1973. So, and I don't understand really, because I think that honestly, very often, not always, but very often, the guys working on the rear cars, they miss what we modelers usually do. So we are always searching for the best type of detail ever on our models. It will be a car, will be a plane, will be a tank, will be a truck, whatever you like, a motorbike. But instead, the real guys making the real car with the idea of, this is the real thing, they miss some details. So it's very easy to cross works that looks stunning, and you look carefully with what I used to say with the modeling eye, and you see a lot of mistakes, you know, the stupid mistakes, because it's just something that maybe can be sanded off a little better. I mean, between making it wrong and making it correctly, there is very, very few lines, you know. It's just to study better the picture, you know. It's just around that. So it's not so easy to do it today, because very, very often the nicest picture, the nicest quality picture that we can find is basically around refurbished vehicles. You know, I see almost in Formula One, it's very, very easy to go in mistakes and so on. You know, I was looking, for example, the Ferrari 126 C2, and there is a, you know, it's a nightmare, because the real refurbished is completely different from what it was in the reality, the original Gilles Villeneuve car. So it's a little bit tricky and complicated to do that, but we will see. I hope that this is a very interesting project, you know, mostly for the guys liking the racers of the early 80s in Germany and the American racer. I think this will be extremely interesting, and yes, it's once again a Porsche, despite my model is GT40 Model Works. When you say, Paolo, you should be Porsche Model Works, then Zuffenhausen send me the lawyers and grab me and close me inside some German jails that we're really not willing to do it. Thanks for watching, guys. See you in the next.